On the 8th of January 2017, the serene beaches of West Java, Indonesia, became the setting of a very unusual incident that captures the unpredictability of nature and a baffling disappearance. Here, on a day like any other, Nining Sunarsih, 52 years old at the time, and her family were spending the day together on the sands and in the waters of the Citepus Beach. They'd been holidaying together in the city of Sukabumi, and on that day had travelled down to Citepus Beach. The Sunarsih family picked a spot they liked the look of and set up for what was supposed to be a nice outing together and a day full of relaxation and play with the younger ones. As the day unfolded, that was exactly how they spent it. However, later in the afternoon, the family decided to cool off in the sea. Initially, it was calm and fun, and the sea must have been a nice respite from the tropical heat. In a sudden turn though, what started as gentle waves quickly grew into something more worrisome. The Sunarsih's laughter was soon replaced by concern as the waves became increasingly turbulent. Nining found herself caught in large waves that were pulling her away from the shore, and she wasn't strong enough to fight against the current. Despite her family's desperate attempts to reach her, she was swept away by the powerful pull of the sea, and everyone watched helplessly as she kept bobbing beneath the waves. In the span of just a few moments, a day of joy turned into a nightmare. The family's call for help drew the attention of others nearby who ran to them, but by this time, Nining was getting further and further away, and eyewitnesses at the beach stated that as they saw her for the final time, she was waving for help while being carried away. By this time, it was now clearly dangerous to enter the water, as doing so risked being dragged under and away with her. As this was going on, the authorities were contacted, but the people present had lost their visual on Nining. In the wake of this, the beach was essentially transformed into a search and rescue hub, with authorities bringing boats, divers, and placing helicopters above the sea in the hopes of spotting her. Though the situation must have seemed pretty bleak to everyone involved. Boats sliced through the waves, and when it was safe to do so, the divers plunged into the depths while helicopters scanned from above. It wasn't just the professionals who searched, the local community and Nining's family joined, but there was no trace of her. As hours turned into days, the sea had nothing to offer. At least, that was the case at first, but according to press outlets in Indonesia, on the 7th day of the search, January the 14th, 2017, a body was found washed up on the shore. This body was not intact and was in a state of advanced decomposition. From what I can gather, the authorities seemed absolutely certain that this was Nining, but the family did not agree. They stated that the body they were presented with didn't fit Nining's characteristics at all, and stated that the fingernails were different and that it was missing Nining's birthmarks on the abdomen. It's important to note that in warmer waters, decomposition proceeds faster, so it is possible that a body could show advanced stages of decay even after a week. This obviously can be made even worse when considering scavenger marine life, which can lead to further damage of the body. There are other factors too, such as strong currents that can cause damage, but the point being that because of these factors, authorities were sure that it was Nining. The family persisted and argued that it wasn't her, and a later DNA test showed that they were correct. This body didn't belong to Nining. According to the regionalcompass.com, the information I received from the authorities, the DNA test results were negative and the body was found to be male. As far as I can tell, I don't believe that this body was ever identified, though it was a very odd coincidence considering the timing. Whatever the case may be though, the search effort had failed to locate Nining. However, the finding of the unrelated body wouldn't be the only unusual occurrence. 10 months after Nining disappeared into the sea, local police would arrest a woman on the Citepus Beach. I'm not actually sure what she was arrested for, but this woman was estimated to be around Nining's age, and was said to be dazed and confused. She had no memory of how she got there, who her family were, or who she even was. So clearly, she was experiencing significant mental health problems at the time. This woman ended up being placed into a care home while they tried to figure out who she was. The manager of the care home believed that this was Nining. I've had to translate this, so it's not a perfect one-to-one, but here's a quote from Compass ID, a press outlet in Indonesia. The care home's manager, Denny Solang, indicated to reporters that the care home had taken care of Nining. Denny confirmed this during a meeting with the police at the care home, which is for people with mental health issues. Denny said Nining was arrested by Satpol public order officers at Citepus Beach in November 2017. She had no ID and was difficult to talk to. We ended up designating her as Patient X12. I am sure that Patient X12 is Nining. We took care of her, but she ran away in January 2018. It is possible that she lived on the streets afterwards, he said, while showing reporters a file photograph of the woman he called Patient X12. Unfortunately, the article itself didn't share the comparison pictures. I'm not sure if there's some sort of patient confidentiality there to consider. In any case, Denny described that when comparing the current pictures of her in the care home to those in the press from the time she disappeared, he said that the only difference was that she was thinner now. He also gave further context into the lack of an ID situation, saying that at the time they had 119 people in their care, and only 22 had ID cards. Or in other words, there were 97 unidentified people staying at the care home, who I suppose in some sense had just been lost and forgotten, and he believed that Nining was another one of those people. Given that this happened 10 months after she vanished, I'm not sure how you go about explaining that exactly. Maybe one idea might be that before drowning, the waves had brought her to another location along the beach further up, away from the onlookers, but she'd hit her head or something like that. Then as a result had memory problems and effectively became homeless for 10 months. I have absolutely no idea. That does somehow seem unlikely at first glance. Without any additional context at this stage, you might argue that Occam's razor would suggest that this woman was just someone else entirely that happened to look similar to Nining. While Denny was convinced that Patient X12 was Nining, when her family members came to investigate and compare pictures, they rejected the idea. Nining's daughter, 22-year-old Wanda, simply stated, "That's not a picture of my mum. I don't know who she is." Ahmed Sazmita, a 51-year-old who was a community leader of some kind, knew Nining and worked with her on a family welfare movement program. He said that Nining was a well-respected preschool teacher. He also added something of interest. He said that Nining's behaviour had changed before she disappeared. Before, she had frequently interacted with her family members. However, after a certain point, she became strangely quiet, similar to how Denny and his social care workers described Patient X12. This was all incredibly bad timing, of course, because by the time Denny started to have suspicions that it was Nining, Patient X12 had already left and ran away from the care home, and the local authorities just couldn't find her after this. So, Nining's family never actually got the opportunity to identify her personally outside of the picture comparisons. Now, you might think that was the end of the story, but it's not, and things are about to get even stranger, so let's get bizarre. 18 months after Nining vanished into the ocean, on the 1st of July 2018, she was found on the same beach that she disappeared from initially. Nining's brother said that he began to have strange dreams about Nining, lying unconscious on the sand, wearing the same clothes as on the day that she vanished. The brother said that at first he ignored this dream, but after it kept repeating for 3 nights, he convinced the family to travel with him back to the beach. They arrived sometime in the early evening on the 1st and couldn't find her. But after looking for a few hours, at midnight she was discovered by her sister, who was present when Nining disappeared in the first place. Nining was found early on Sunday, July 1st. Her family said that local spirits had told them in a dream to go and collect Nining where they had lost her. However, their reunion was devoid of joy, as Nining did not recognise anyone. According to reports, Sunarsih was unconscious, fully clothed, and around 500 metres from where she initially vanished. Her family took her home and called medics, who confirmed that she had no major injuries. She has since regained consciousness and has been able to eat and drink, but is so far unable to talk, meaning nobody has been able to question her about what happened and where she has been. Police have opened an investigation into the incident, but are urging people to think logically about the disappearance and not jump to conclusions. One of the reasons that police urge that type of caution is because speculations began to run wild. Sometimes in ways that you might not expect, because various press outlets began to question numerous ideas that perhaps we in Europe and America might consider outlandish to some degree. For instance, Finemo.com, which I've had to translate so again it's not perfect, stated this: Nining's return after 18 months after her disappearance also stirred up many people. It feels like Nining's return doesn't make sense. Many people associate this event with mystical things. Palakabratu Beach itself is known to people as a mystical place. Some say Palakabratu Beach is the magical door of the kingdom of the Queen of the South Coast. The door is in the middle of the seas of the beach. That said, the magical door connects the human world with the other dimension in the nature of Nyai Roro Kidul. Slightly confusing, but things get lost when using Google Translate. But when referring to the Palakabratu Beach, they're referring to the beach that Nining both disappeared from and was later found on. I found this Reddit comment interesting. I can't find much on this story besides what you already found, but the beach she was found on has an interesting reputation among Indonesian people. I personally don't believe in all those mythical stories, but it's an interesting way to look at the case, especially since nearly everyone there is convinced that a mythical goddess is responsible for her disappearance. Given that this was a popular suspicion from the locals, let's have a very brief look at the legend and what it's been referred to. Nyai Roro Kidul, the Indonesian mermaid queen of the Southern Sea. The Queen of the Southern Sea is probably the most single popular mythical figure in all Java, if not Indonesia. For centuries, she has reigned from a seemingly blurry line between myth and reality, inspiring both bedtime stories and academic research. Nyai Roro Kidul is said to rule an underwater empire located off the southern coast of Java, a certain portion of the Indian Ocean. The tale of Nyai Roro Kidul is associated with a lot of earlier folklore, but the earliest definitive account of the deity comes in the 16th century. It's widely believed that the rulers of Java still actively seek counsel from Nyai Roro Kidul through asceticism and pilgrimage. All the southern coast of Java are generally considered territory of the Queen. There are other mentions of Nyai Roro Kidul in relation to disappearances, as in the folklore she was also blamed for taking fishermen, among other sailors in this general area off the coast. I often find that in other parts of the world, the locals are much more open to such things than we might be in Europe and America, generally speaking anyway. That aspect aside, when Nining was found, or returned I suppose, as the locals might argue, her family stated that she was soaked through, that her hair and clothes were full of sand, and that she was in a state of disorientation and wasn't able to communicate. They also stated that she was wearing the exact same clothes as she disappeared in initially, but her clothes clearly had not been eroded by the sea. This only leads to further confusion though, because whoever patient X12 was, surely she'd been given some fresh clothing inside the care home. I can't imagine, if that was Nining, that she'd been wearing the exact same clothes for 18 months now. In any case, Nining was taken to hospital after being found. There, they said that it was like she was unaware of the presence of others and didn't or couldn't communicate. Tommy Herman Sear, a psychiatrist at the hospital, stated that she'd been suffering from mental health issues and that she would withdraw quite a lot. Tommy said he was still unable to ascertain what had happened to Nining and that she remained quiet. Questions surround what exactly happened to Nining. Doctors said that Nining was physically healthy. She had no injuries and showed no signs of dehydration. It was hard to believe that she was lost at sea for 18 months. This could mean that she hadn't sustained a head injury, but instead, if she had literally been homeless for 18 months, it could be that everything that happened to her really took its toll mentally. Although, if the sea did push her back onto the beach at another location, that must have happened fairly quickly after she went missing, because you can only tread water for so long before drowning. Perhaps the incident shell-shocked her to the point that she had a medical emergency that then affected her memory. Is it really possible that she might have washed up further along the beach moments after disappearing, completely lost her memory due to a medical event, and walked off and became homeless for 18 months? Tommy said that time and intensive care would be needed to help Nining come out of her mental isolation that had ensnared her. Apart from the support of those close to her, Nining's will was also important. Until this happens, questions will still be abound regarding the connection between Nining and patient X12. This incident was well and truly swept under the rug because there are just no updates to this at all. The last mentions of it come from around July of 2018. So, I suppose that leaves us with a few questions. What exactly happened to Nining on the day that she vanished? Was she washed ashore shortly after the incident? Was Nining patient X12? Or were the locals correct in suggesting that something, perhaps out of the ordinary, had taken place? Or did something else entirely happen? For those interested in the Missing 411, I thought we might have a look at some of the Missing 411 profile points and see if there are any that are relevant here. First of all, a point of separation. I suppose you could argue that once she entered the water and could no longer be seen was the moment of separation. The Missing 411 states that a vast majority of the disappearances included in its umbrella occurred during the late afternoon, which this one also did. Disability or illness. This one is more difficult. It certainly seems that once she was found, she was suffering mentally. And the comments made by Ahmed Sazmita may point to a change in her behaviour or mental state before the disappearance, but this one is unclear. Disappearances often occur near water, boulder fields or berry patches. This one checks out. The missing is found in an area previously searched. This one also happened. In the case of a reappearance where the person is alive, they are often confused and not sure how they got to where they were found. Yeah. In the vast majority of cases, there is a weather event during the time of the disappearance or later affecting the search. I suppose the sea getting rough constitutes that. From what it was said, it was quite sudden. There are of course more profile points than this, but these seem to be the ones that are relevant to Nining. I'm in two minds about whether or not this would constitute as a Missing 411 entry. What do you think? In any case, as you can imagine, this incident led to headlines like "Truth or Concoction?" The family of Nining Sunarsih, an Indonesia woman purportedly swept out to sea a year and a half ago, being found alive at the same spot she went missing. I then came across this comment. I can't help but be reminded of the case of John Darwin, who passed away in a canoeing accident only to walk into a police station 5 years later claiming he had amnesia. I've never heard of John before, so let's have a look. On the 21st of March 2002 at Seaton Carew, John was seen paddling out to sea in his kayak. On the same day that he was seen kayaking, he was reported missing later after failing to attend his place of work, which happened to be a prison. This started a large-scale search, similar to that of Nining, I'd imagine. However, despite searching 62 square miles of the coastline, they found no sign of John anywhere. On the 22nd, the day afterwards, they'd found the wreckage of John's kayak that had washed up on the beach. The red canoe called Orca was found in several pieces in the North Gare area of Seaton Carew, Hartlepool at around 5:30 PM yesterday. The operation was scaled down after 4 days when no signs of Mr. Darwin was found and rescue workers admitted the chances of Mr. Darwin's survival were bleak. What was particularly odd about this was that the conditions in the sea at the time shouldn't have caused an issue. The North Sea was said to be unusually calm that spring day. Tom Waller, 60, a member of Hartlepool Coast Watch, said that rescuers had been puzzled that the prison officer could have gotten into trouble in such conditions. 6 months after his disappearance, Mrs. Darwin, a doctor's receptionist, told a local newspaper that she could not move on without seeing her husband's body. She said, "People pass away, have a funeral, they have a headstone, there is something to mark the fact that they existed on this earth. But without a body, I don't know how we can mark John's life." 5 years after this event, on the 1st of December 2007, John walked into the West End Central Police Station in London, where he claimed to have no memory of the past 5 years. Anne was elated at the return of her missing husband. Only by that time, the police had been suspecting that John might have been alive the whole time, since Anne, who was portraying herself as a broken-hearted widow, took foreign holidays and planned to move to Panama soon after the incident, alongside sending vast amounts of money abroad. As it turns out, for some years after the time that John was thought to have passed away in the ocean, he'd been living in a bedsit beside the family home. Then, in secret in February of 2003, he moved back in with Anne. Anne, on the other hand, received a payout of £250,000 in March of 2002 due to John's life insurance. In 2024, that would be equal to around £444,000 or $563,000. However, this is where things really started to fall apart for the Darwins, as they weren't the brightest couple in the world. Again, in 2003, John came across one of his neighbours who asked him, "Aren't you supposed to have passed away?" John told the neighbour not to tell anyone, and this guy, not wanting to be involved, remained silent. A close call, but he managed to get away with it. The second close call came in 2004 when John applied for a passport using the false name of John Jones, but used his real address. It seems that they wanted out of the country since 2002, but they were sure taking their sweet time about it. Hilariously, in March of 2006, one of John's neighbours wanted some building work done to his property, but John signed a planning objection using a false name. The audacity of this man was just incredible. He wasn't even supposed to be alive. He had plans to leave the country, and this guy thought it'd be a good idea to object to property plans that weren't even going to affect him in the end. John and Anne settled on Panama, and they flew out there in 2006, still obviously using his fake alias, where they were pictured by a Panamanian property agent who posted the picture to the internet. The plan was to buy a property out there in El Dorado for £50,000 or £89,000 today. John stayed in Panama to see this through, while Anne returned to the UK to sell their home for £295,000 or again £523,000 today. Finally, in October of 2007, they'd achieved their goal and had moved to Panama, and somehow it looked like they'd gotten away with it. However, John started to miss his sons, and being the genius that he was, he decided to go back to England to see them, instead of having them fly out to him. This was dumb for a number of obvious reasons, but to make matters even worse, Panama's visa laws had changed recently. Now, identities had to be verified by UK police in order to be granted the visa that he needed. So, on the 1st of December 2007, John walked into that police station claiming to have no memory of the past 5 years. This didn't work, as the police had already suspected something was off, and long story short, John received 6 years and 3 months in prison, while Anne was sentenced to 6 years and 6 months, somehow getting the longest sentence of the two. Anyway, going back to this Reddit comment, I think we can safely say that these disappearances don't really bear all that much of a resemblance in the end, at least from the information available. In regards to Nining's incident, I didn't come across any evidence of anyone trying to profit from Nining's supposed passing. As far as I can tell, no property had been sold, no one was trying to leave the country, and nothing was reported about life insurance. Also, the medical professionals seemed certain that she was suffering mentally, which of course, John was not. John and his wife were just trying to commit fraud, while it seems that Nining may have had some kind of medical emergency, or if you're of the missing 411 persuasion, may have been exposed to something particularly out of the ordinary. I would very much like to hear your thoughts on this, so please do let me know in the comments below. With that, I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons who've been running around on the screen. If you'd like to become a patron to support the channel and have your name running around too, then please do visit the link in the description. If you found the video interesting, then please do leave a like and a comment, hit the bell and subscribe if you haven't already. These things help me an awful lot. If not, feel free to leave a dislike. I'm happy to hear your honest opinion either way. I hope that you've had a great day or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys, peace.